All right. All right, let's see. Who do we have on? Everybody's chatting in the comments. Matthew's here. Kane is here. I know Christine is going to be jumping on here shortly. Um, so very, very excited. Again, if people are jumping on, you should be able to hear me and see me. If you can't, now's the time to Q&A. As a reminder, it looks like a lot of the audience is carrying over from last panel to this panel, but this is meant to be interactive, right? So the power of panels is that you get to ask your questions and get them answered, right? We want to make this as relevant, as actionable for you. You're spending the time to be here. Kane and Matthew and Christine, they're spending the time to be here. We have some questions ready for them. We're going to give them the hardest questions we can find. We're going to try to stump them, I promise. We're going to send questions their way. But the real value is the questions that you have. As you saw in the last panel, we will prioritize live questions. And if we need to double click or zoom in onto something, we will. So if there's a question that is asked and the answer feels good, but you're like, I want to go one layer deeper, type it into the Q&A. That is the power of the panels. So having said that, yeah, there we go. We got the bicep flex on the screen from Matthew. I love it. All right. So we're going to go right in. We're gonna get everybody really comfortable with talking right away. So, like I said, we have Kane, Christine, and Matthew. I'm gonna let each one of you introduce yourself, even though I have my little cheat sheet over here. So if you miss something, I can always call it out. We'll go with Kane, a quick intro of who you are and what you're up to. Then Christine, then Matthew, and then we'll go right into our questions.
All right. Sounds like Dave, there's a lot of action already. So that's pretty
Lot,
great.
lot of questions, a lot of comments, a lot of takeaways. Yeah.
And I'm glad that they're only going to be the most difficult questions for Matthew. So I appreciate that, first of all, because I can only answer easy questions. So yeah, Kane Polakoff. I've been in the space for almost 28 years. I am the partner in charge of the CAS practice at Cohen Resnick, and have had a lot of fun, working with a lot of folks across the industry and the profession. And really, it's really impressive. I know the three panelists before, and just seeing all the great people and all the great things that the evolution of CAS is here, and we're just seeing a lot of changes and good things for the profession. And happy to answer any simple questions from the audience. Thanks, Dave.
Sounds good. And when we met in person, Kane, I took more pictures meeting you in person. This person. I got all these pictures of your most photogenic conference attendee ever is with Kane, by the way. Anyway, so thanks for being here. Christine.
So Christine's my co-founder, and she texted me she's having problems. She can't come off mute and she can't come off camera. She's going to reboot.
All right, reboot, Matthew. Then it's on to you as the reboot happens, and then
And then we'll do the stretch out. We'll just stretch out the
well,
introduction to get. No, I'm just teasing.
we're gonna get a new shoe on Christine, and the audio is gonna work. So
Awesome. My name is Matthew May. I've been the president of Acuity Accounting for the last 12 years. Before that, I was an audit partner. So I'm 12 years, 13 years recovered from audit. We built a virtual CAS team that grew from, I guess, 10 people when I started 13 years ago to about 125 people today, over 30 states in 4 countries. Yep, I think that's right. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
great. And apparently, you get all the hard questions. I'm gonna do a brief. Like I said, I had my little blurb here just in case. I wasn't planning on the reboot happening, but Christine's the owner of Infinite Advisors. She spent over 25 years leading, running, managing outsourced accounting practices. When she comes back on, make sure to give her a couple seconds to talk about this in more depth. But that said, welcome to the panel. And then, of course, as Christine comes on board, we'll unmute her, we'll hand over, we'll pass the ball, and we'll kind of work around the horn. So the first one, we're going to get right into it. We have a lot of people. We pulled them at the top. Are you offering CAS? Not surprisingly, majority said yes. All right. And the question we often get, and for the panelists, I'm not going to say answer all three in one go, right? We'll start with one and we'll kind of bounce around. I have a couple slides here. So don't look at the slides and say, okay, so everybody has to answer 3 questions to start. No. So I want to talk about first and foremost, strategies for scaling up the team. I'll go over to Matthew. I'll stop sharing here for a second so we can spotlight Matthew. And what the way I take this question is you have initial level of success with CAS, high six figures, maybe low, maybe you've hit a 7-figure run rate. You know what? We're gonna pause that question. Christine is back. Christine, I could
All
see
right.
you. Is the audio working? Great.
Yes,
Christine, you want to
thank
give a
you.
quick intro? The reboot happened and it worked.
Yeah, it's always when you need it, right?
Yeah, of
That
course. Yeah.
works. So yeah, no, sorry about that. Apologies.
No worries. Could you just give a quick intro of who you are and what you're up to?
Sure. Christine Triantos, been in CAS space forever with this wonderful group, and we're all just one big close family community. Like Deb said, and Deneen was with BDO, started with BDO 29 years ago, regional partner of their CAS practice, and then has since left and have a CAS consulting and our Infinite Ties community membership as well. So
Fantastic. All right. Thanks for being here. We're just going to dig into, the question came out, was like, oh, what are some of the best strategies for scaling teams? And the way I'm taking this, and we're going to tee it up for Matthew first, is, another way to look at it, when does something break? Is it 7 figures? Is it 2 million? Is it 3 million? And what needs to change on that first break point? We'll kind of start with you, Matthew.
Yeah, we had several break points over the last decade that were really, really tough. But we saw a big break point right between 2 and 3 million in revenue. We saw another big break point around 50 people. And then as we were approaching 150 people, we saw another kind of choke point that we've been anticipating kind of driving through. I mean, when one of the secrets that we went to very early was using variable compensation to scale. Like when you're 5 people, 10 people, like adding on another 120K body, like a controller, 120K, 150K is just really daunting. So getting into an alignment model where people are paid variably was like hugely critical to our success. And to this day, we have, over half of our employees on variable comp models to allow them to flex. And there are people that prioritize flexibility over stability of income. So finding people that align and creating that alignment has really been like almost our secret sauce for the last decade of being able to keep up with the growth.
What's an example of that, like to make it very practical? If somebody's listening, they're like variable comp, I don't know. Does that mean instead of getting paid 120 salary, you're making 100K salary with the potential to make 150 and client, or like
when we started out, for people that were targeting, under 30 hours a week, like trying to really achieve maximum flexibility, what we said the trade-off there was say, hey, you can take this rate per hour, whatever it was, 50, 60, $70 an hour. And then last year, we added an admin time component to it. Similar to, we saw your part-time controller had this model where there was like one rate for billable time, one rate for admin time. So $30 was the admin peg we've seen in the market. Then we have a billable rate on top of that. So people have 2 rates that they can use. And that creates like lots of alignment from if you have 1-person teams. It doesn't create lots of alignment to do leverage work because people are paid on their billable hour. So there's trades off to all of these things, but as a component to scaling for us, for the size clients that we deal with, we do lots of 1-person teams. It was really, really helpful for us to have that alignment.
very cool. Kane, what have you seen as kind of these predictable breakpoints? You've launched a number of CAS practices and in departments, and so what have you seen as it now? We haven't gone through in a couple times areas that you're able to kind of mitigate or break through a lot faster as you grow quickly.
Yeah, it's that's always the challenge, is the chicken versus the egg, or the egg versus the chicken. And as this is my second tour duty, and you learn from the first tour, and you even learn from the second tour. So we have had to, my first tour, we had to grow from like 0 to 100 in about 2-3 years. And at Cohen Resnick, we've gone from about a handful to over almost 100 people in a year and a half, 2 years. So, and you may ask, well, how do you do that? And I think that comes down to kind of taking a step back and looking at your capacity. So you need to make an investment in your people up front. And, I think, the hard part with our organizations, or you look in public accounting, it's always, well, let the work come, and then you hire the people to support the work. But when you're in a fast growing profession like CAS, and I know Christine has the same thing as me, is that you have to hire and prepare for what's going to be coming. So what we did is to kind of bifurcate it by verticals, and identifying 5 verticals that would have a foundation to be able to split up that work. And then also one of the key things that we did was create a global capacity. So not only having the staff here locally that are specific by whether it's a renewable energy or non-for-profit or hospitality or government contracting, and you hire all those people. But then you also build that scale. We have an operation in our Chennai, India operation, which has been there for 15 years, and in our Philippines. So, the hard part is to balance. So I don't know if I'd say it's a breaking point, but it's really capacity planning, resource management, and proactive staffing, which I call is how we handle that. And to look at your pipeline and to determine how much you can let in and how much you can service, and not to get to a point where you can't service anything. So, what I've learned in my past is to take on what you can do. And then if the things you can take on, have those honest conversations with your clients, and set timelines in the future, if you can, to bring them on when you're ready. So my first tour, we kind of took everything, and we broke, right? And we broke again, and we kind of ran around, and that's why I don't have any hair left, because my hair was on fire. But this time around, we're really trying to be conscious on the type of clients we take. And we scale, since we're able to scale by 5 verticals, it's a lot easier to do that in parallel than to have just a bunch of people trying to scale. So a long answer to your question, but it's always the challenge of trying to continue to refine and project, because there are some clients that call on a Friday and want to start on Monday. Those are the tough ones. But the ones you really want to know is if you have an opportunity and you start it 2 months from now, it's easier to staff for that. David.
Yeah, and I love those ideas of these kind of these industry groups, these business units. Imagine the break points can be at different times for different industry, for different work streams. Christine, what have you seen in all of your work of like, strategies for scaling these CAS teams, and or like the common breaking points and how to mitigate them?
Yeah, I mean, I agree a lot with what Matthew and Kane have said. It's just, I think what I would just add is that teams break when they don't standardize, right? When they're taking on every client and they're trying to take on every system and every software and do all the things that's not repeatable, right? And so when they start to break is, I have this one-off client over here on Peachtree, or, whatever some of the old systems are too. And so it's not adapting to the client, but having the clients adapt to what your standards are and what your standard tech stack is and all of that. So anything, I always say, scalable, sustainable, repeatable. That's how you have to go into building your practice. And also, just to add to it, when you do that, then you don't throw people at the problem as much as you're throwing solutions, and then you're hiring the right people at the right levels, rather than really stopping and focusing on how to create that sustainability, scalability.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love that. Matthew, a clarifying question from you from the audience. Did you say you had 2 billable rates?
1 billable rate and then a admin rate. So like if they're coming to do administrative work or working on the firm stuff, like that would be the $30 rate, and then the billable rate would be the actual billable rate, like when they do billable work. So
Okay.
that's one of our that's our variable comp model. We have both. We have a fixed comp model and a variable comp model. So for people that for employees, you have to be responsive, right? For employees that want stability for their income, you put them on the fixed compensation model, and for the people that want flexibility, you go with the variable, and it enables some of this dynamic growth that we've been able to experience. So.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for clarifying. And again, y'all, if you have questions, type them in. I'm going to keep going through some of the ones that were submitted in advance. I'm going to go back to Christine here. Somebody asked, leading up in the registration, how often you're talking about standardizing. Standardizing makes a lot of sense. I'm definitely in team standardization, but how often should we revisit these workflows and these templates? What is too little? What is maybe too much? What do you think is the Goldilocks for process enhancements, process tweaks, things like that?
Well, being in the tech space that you're in, right? I mean, you know how fast things change. So I would say, though, you always have to, like Deb was saying, she learns X amount of products on a regular basis. You don't necessarily always want to be the early adopters, and you want to know what's coming and what's new that's out there. So I would say, every 9 to 15 months that you revisit what that looks like. But again, it's not switching anything. And when we talk about like implementing and testing new software, we would always at BDO, just like big scale, we just say, let's just take this handful of clients and this handful of people. Let's work through all of the issues and all of the bugs and answer all of the questions that a client might have and the team might have before you just turn around and deploy something. And I know it's hard if you are within a firm to be super specifically industry niched. However, if you can just go down a couple paths and you become the expert, and all of that standardization becomes standardized work papers, standardized templates, standardized. And so then from there, you're just tweaking and you're not doing any major changes and shifts that often.
Got it. I have a question for Kane, again, showed up in registration, which is, as you have different, I'll call it business units and these different industries, what's the staffing model that makes sense? Do you work in these pods? It seems to be quite popular. Do you design these industry groups in these kinds of pods with a manager over it, or how is that team constructed within an industry vertical?
Yeah, so we're staffed by verticals. So I'll start. I'll take a non-for-profit vertical as an example. So we have those verticals, and we have a replication of that in our global operations, and that runs from a consultant to senior to a manager, senior manager, and director. Okay, but we also have a horizontal. Our horizontal is our software solutions team. So kind of going back to what Christine was talking about, their job is looking at automation. What are the latest tools that are out there? How do we drive efficiency? So they're going horizontally. But we also have a shared service center. So and that is our shared service center is based on pods. So if you think about accounts payable, if you have, I'll just say 100 clients, you have your shared service team is working across the verticals too. So if you're processing invoices, you may be using 2 or 3 different technology tools. There's many that I think we all know on this call, and they're kind of working in a place to help ensure that we're able to process those transactions. And as invoices come in, they go through the process, they take care of it, and that's done across the vertical. And what that's also allowed us to do is, from a career pathing perspective, you can start off in shared services, work your way up, become a pod leader, get up to a supervisor, and then move over to the GL team. So in the GL team, which is in the non-for-profit group, we have it broken down. So think of our senior managers as controllers, and then you have managers that are managing many clients. And then within those managers, you have a staff, and that staff is a global staff. So depending on the size of the client, you may have one client that has only one manager and a handful of seniors, but then the shared service piece of that is being done by, the accounts payable is being done by the shared service. So it all depends on, we have clients that we have 10 people that are fully dedicated, and that's more of, you can call it a pod, it's a team, an accounting team. That's helping to support it. Or we have some clients that it's only 100 hours a month where there's only pieces of what that need is. So we adjust our capacity and we adjust our team to what the needs are of our clients. So one of our clients may want us to take over their whole entire accounting department and payroll department. In that situation, we're structured very similar to how an accounting department would be structured within an organization, with the caveat of the shared service center, the software solutions team, and how all that comes together.
Interesting. Matthew, how do you approach
Can I
staffing
just
at
add
Acuity?
real quick, David?
Of course, go ahead.
Kane. So in addition to doing the industries, I also recommend taking something that, like, we would have teams that were really good at revenue recognition and third-party systems and POS systems and getting that data. So we would have like a rev rec team that they never touched the client. They were never client facing. So in addition to industry niches, you can start to create these internal teams that are really good at certain aspects. Sorry.
Just before we go to Matthew, what level of scale do you think, starts to open up these like revenue recognition teams, right? So for folks that maybe are kind of on more of the earlier stages of CAS, could they start thinking about this day one, or do you have to reach a certain scale before you kind of open up this concept?
Say, that early senior level, that 3 to 4 year. I mean, staff, you're just learning kind of all the basics, technical, and so I mean, I would just say at that senior level.
Okay.
I mean, I have thoughts on that in particular. One of the things that really helped us because we were smaller when we were getting started is to stop thinking about roles as full time. So like if it helps you, if you need a revenue recognition specialist, you might, and you have a 10-person team, you can say who's going to spend 10% of their time as our revenue recognition specialist, because you don't need a full-time person, and designating that person as 10% for that and just making sure they accommodate, and that's a support role for the entire team. So as you're building out an org chart, if you can imagine, if you can then condition it by saying, oh, this is a 10%, and then making sure nobody adds up to more than 100%, that's a really helpful tool that I've used in the past as we've been scaling, because we're like, oh, I can't afford that role, but we're like, oh, we don't really need full time there. We need somebody to spend 15% of their time on marketing, right? Like those other roles have been really helpful for me to think of. And then I'm big on rules of thumb just in general, just like don't assume every role is 100%. That's number one rule. Establish a threshold for how many people one person can supervise. For us, it's 8. After 8, we start looking at it and adding more supervisors. How much time is the minimum amount you want people spending on a client, right? So before you add the AP team to it, like if we had an AP specialist, it would have to be at least 4 hours of AP work. We're seeing diminishing returns for less than 4 hours a month in engagement with the client. It confuses the client, too many people on the client. And we work with much smaller clients than most people. So some of our clients pay south of $1,000 a month to work with us. So like having single person teams that are cross-functional, like that having just some rules of thumb where you kind of stick to like, what's the client experience? Do we want 1 hour of 8 people's time working with a small client? Like, is that going to be additive, or do you have those things? So creating rules of thumb industry wise, like you can be in an industry that means you want to spend 80% of your time. Most of our people for career development want 20% of their time to see other things, to explore other industries. So then you have to have cross-functional people, right? You have to allow for people to work across teams, and how do you build that system?
Yeah,
so really think about what the rules that are important to you are. I would encourage people. And those are really helpful kind of like guiding principles.
Yeah, and I think one other thing to add, which is the value of what we can provide as a CAS organization, is the quality assurance side. So, having a prepare reviewer, making sure that the quality, whether it's a transaction or a financial statement, is going through the right process, so that before it's shared or even discussed with a client, that you're using the right expertise. And that's why if you look at the vertical, if you have folks that have been in the real estate industry for 25 years or have that nomenclature, that of course can train the seniors and the staff as they move up, but they're also able to have more important conversations, more pertinent information when we start looking at certain KPIs or evaluations. So even looking at, it's not just here's a financial statement, thank you, we're good. It's having those conversations with our client CFOs or COOs or even CEOs and helping them look for certain things, that if it's in a hospitality client, it could be food costs and paper and labor. If it's a non-for-profit or whatever it may be, you're able to have pertinent conversations. So that's where I think it's making sure that the manufacturing process is being done smoothly, but you also need to ensure that on the value-added advisory type of the work, which I think we're all migrating towards, where our clients have higher expectations, not just a deliverable of a financial statement or package. They want more than that today. So,
and Kane, I love that, what you just said, because what everyone has to think of is, as you grow that team and that manager level, that review is so important. Mitigating risk in CAS is so important in your engagement letter, but also I just want to reiterate that point that Kane gave with your managers the work needs to be reviewed before it ever goes out on a monthly basis.
I'm a total contrarian here. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I think it matters for context for the audience on what stage and what the client has bought. Like you guys deal with you guys are talking about 7 to 10K a month clients that can afford like review structures and stuff like that. When you start getting into this sub $1,000 a month space, where client expectation is a cash basis financial statement, I actually have had this discussion with several people. I challenge that, and we actually don't have a review layer on that. We use some tools like VerifyQ to like automate the reviews and some people to like give instant feedback, but a traditional review is not appropriate on the very, very low end when you start getting to cash basis delivery. If you explain that to clients, then they
Yeah,
understand
well,
what they're getting.
you're setting that expectation. I mean, most of our clients range between $40,000 to $50,000 a month.
Yeah.
So
So there's I'm just saying it's totally
No, it's
different
a great
world. Some of
point.
the
It's a great point.
some of the audience might be down market to where we're accommodating a different level of service. Like I think I've actually in our firm we have 3 levels of service within each industry, and we define the service by what the client expectation is. So cash basis, full gap, or that blob of people that has like a soft close that kind of wants like partial modified cash basis. So we have those 3, we call them stages that we define. So we define what workflows you put in there by stage, by industry.
And that's a good conversation. I could see that for the cash basis a little bit, but even then we'll say, even a manager, you can go in and spend 10, 15 minutes, just go look at it high level. So, but I love the conversation, Matthew, because that's, I mean, and those were on our small clients too. Cash basis, okay, but when you get into like some of the accrual pieces.
Yeah.
And
See,
maybe
I have the 4-hour rule. Like if you're spending less than 4 hours a month, you're not really adding value. So then I challenge whether we should do it or not, or if it's really additive, because you don't really know the client. So that's where my 4-hour rule comes in, and I start getting into philosophical conversations with people.
right.
So,
I mean,
on the small end, right?
it's
So,
risk though, right? Because then we would have clients that were using financials for something we didn't know. And
oh
then,
yeah.
and so then once it comes back on you one time, you're like, okay, I'm never doing that again.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I tend to have higher risk tolerance than some people in the field,
I
I
have
think.
very low risk tolerance.
Yeah,
I'm off the chart. So
yeah, no, because Matthew, you raise a good point, because we do have small clients, but we do actually do review. But I can see what you're setting that expectations with the clients, but when I was handling smaller clients earlier in my career, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I did have the same situation that we were charging, $500 or $1,000 a month. And then we found out that the client had an issue, and then they came back and said what was wrong. So I guess as long as the positioning is appropriate, I think that's fine. But yeah, I think from a risk perspective, our expectation is they're paying us for the value and the knowledge that we have and the service that we can provide. But the last thing we want to do is send incorrect financial statements. So
yeah, I know it's a risk. It's a challenge. So
This got me thinking. So this was maybe a question within the question that surfaced in registration, even some of the Q&A earlier, which is, one of the challenges one of the challenging things about scaling up any team, but especially CAS, is the culture and the people that you're building out. And so, like Matthew, as you're saying, well, this is a rule of thumb, this is a rule of thumb, this is a rule of thumb. Like, and I mean, you all talked about it, so you're all going to get a chance here. But like, what are some practical, specific things you've done as you've grown so quickly to keep the rules of thumb, to keep the standards, to keep the approach to client services? What have you found to be things you needed to do as the overall leader to help your managers get into the culture so that trickles down to their team?
our COO made us do this values exercise, which I always made fun of at every other company because they seem so shallow. But about 6 years ago, what happened was none of the kind of partners, owners, or what do you want to call them, were doing the interviews anymore with clients. And so our CRO was like, we have to define for everybody what our values are. So when people are doing interviews, when people are being consistent, they know what to pin back to. So one of the best things we did we did this value exercise. Luckily, it was a decade into our company, so it was like, what are we, not what do we want to be? It's like, here's who we are. And then the smartest thing she did was she made it an acronym so everybody could tell you that we're measured, independent, transparent, curious, and happy, because it spells Mitch, and we have Mitch awards and stuff like that. So that was, I always kind of poo-pooed values exercises and stuff like that, but that's been a really crucial one for us, and we've incorporated it in our performance evaluations, in our monthly talks, in our kind of monthly awards and stuff like that, and identified how people should act and how those values look when they're activated. So
Do you have an
that,
example? I love the concept of like, not who do we want to be? Who are we, right? You're 10 years in, but do you have an example of one of those values? Like, how would that then show up in a performance review in a observable or measurable way?
well, I mean, so happy everybody makes fun of, but if I have a situation where I'm mentoring somebody out, or I'm dealing with a difficult employee issue, like the starting question of, are you happy right now in your job, reframes that conversation completely, right? Because if somebody's needs to be counseled out, they're likely not happy, right? So every time that I've had that conversation now, since we've done the values, I've started that conversation with, are you happy? Like, are you happy here? Are you enjoying your work? Are you doing that job? So like, if that's not activated, like, we have to make a change. I feel obligated now to make a change for you, for us, for everybody, because nobody wants to work with somebody who's not happy. The one that everybody gets wrong, or you have to put governor on, is independent. Since we're a 100% remote team, like, that does not mean like willy-nilly. Like, you are independence comes with the responsibility to show up when you told people you were. We have an SLA 24-hour response time. You're accountable to your colleagues for getting work done. You're accountable to your clients for getting work done. So independence is not like willy-nilly. So people like grasp on that. So that's why we didn't use the word flexibility. We use independent. Like, we did a lot of like thinking about, what does that mean and what does that look activated? So that would come up in a performance review, is like, this person consistently demonstrates independence, because when you get a task, they hit their deadlines, they meet their work, right? So each one of them, curiosity is one where we get to people where they won't go and think about, like, we use zero, like that's a new tool for some people still in the States, and like they haven't embraced zero yet, like, because we have a QBO and a zero practice. Like, so you start the conversation like, your curiosity is really not there. Like, zero is a tool that, I mean, we only support 2GLs. Like, zero is a tool like you have to be able to support and really have the curiosity and love for, right?
Yeah, I appreciate those examples, just because, sometimes values, it's really hard to understand how they come to life. So I appreciate the context. Christine, what have you found for, you know, bringing the standards, scaling the standards in a useful way in these CAS practices?
Well, that's a big question, David, like scaling the standards to, like, you could go to like service, to pricing, to technology, right? Like, because you have standards in each of those realms. So I mean, I can speak on some of that. I just want to make sure I'm answering.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, for like, for some of these folks that are growing quickly and they're adding, 2 members, 5 members, 10 team members, 20 team members, maybe they acquire and they're bringing in another CAS practice. What are ways that they could keep a cohesive culture throughout this CAS growth?
I do think that there's, and we're working with a lot of firms right now with all the new people that come in, is just like level set, right? Level set everybody that's coming in. Are they at the same levels? Do they know how to use the base technology? And level setting where your seniors are, where your managers are, where your standardization is within all of that. And the way that I always bring people into the team and scale that as well is making sure that there is not a client meeting that I ever had that the entire engagement team wasn't on. So it's a staff, senior manager, and me. We were always on that call together. So I think that adds a lot of scalability with the teams and with the clients, because everybody was in the know. It didn't take my time then to turn around and have to communicate that over. And it was also upskilling those staff, seniors, managers into that advisory role as well. So I would say that was huge.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. There's just so much to be, kind of like that osmosis that happens with everybody being in that meeting too. Kane, you referenced earlier 0 to 100, 5 to 100, or 5 to 100 in 2 years. So how are you thinking about maintaining, your the team values, the department values, the firm values when you're scaling that quickly? What are some tactical things you've done to try to keep a handle on that with such extreme growth?
Well, it's a simple thing. It's transparency. So I think that everybody, it's interesting as I've learned in my career, I've always wanted to know, how do I fit into an organization and what is my contribution? But more importantly, what is the definition of success for my practice? And that definition of success should correlate to every single individual on my team. Whether you're an intern or you've been with the firm for 10 years. And what we've done is we've been very, very transparent with regards to financial metrics. And what is our top line growth? What is our margin? What is our utilization and all those things. But also the expectations from a culture standpoint on the personal side and getting involved in different events and things like that. So, and that goes across the whole, doesn't matter what vertical, what your role is, doesn't matter where you live. I mean, you can live in New York, or you can live in Chennai, or you can live in South Carolina, you can live in Florida, or even California. But we have what's called the pyramid, very similar, sounds like what Matthew has in his awards. So based on, excellence and teamwork and collaboration. So you have the financial aspect of running it as a business, but you also have the personal side and the contribution that comes with that. So the expectations are very clear. What my goals are, actually, I share my goals with everybody on my team, and I actually, here's where we are, and here's our actuals, and those are disclosed on a monthly basis with everybody. So I think if everybody understands kind of the analogy, I'm on the bus, who's the driver, what seat do I sit in, where's the bus going? I feel that at least everybody's kind of marching towards the same vision to what is success. And so that's what we've done. And when you grow fast, I think it's even more important to spend the time. I interview everybody who's joined our organization, and we continue to have I do week one-on-ones with my directors and my managers, and spend time with my seniors, my global operations, and it's the communication and the value. It's a lot of work, but I think that's what's important to, even though as we get bigger as an organization, everybody should feel part of the organization, understand where they fit in, and how we can actually become successful, which then everybody benefits from that.
I love that. I love that. And if you listen, everybody, we're gonna be rounding out the last 5 minutes here very quickly. If you have questions, type them in now. We're gonna the last question I have teed up, Kane touched on it a little bit, so I'm gonna hand the ball back to you, Kane. Which is somebody asked, well, what are the this is a bit of a black hole, I understand, but like top level metrics you're looking at, high level metrics you're looking at as a CAS leader. You mentioned top line, you mentioned margin, you mentioned utilization. Are those your kind of three go-to that you're kind of keeping a pulse on, or what are you looking at?
Well, I think that we cannot forget about is retention, and it's not just retention of our clients, but a retention of our people, and which is attrition. So I think those, I mean, we are in the people business. We can put the best technology, we can put all this AI, but at the end of the day, it's up to us as our employees and our staff and our team to deliver a great service to our clients. But if our clients are not seeing the value, or if our clients are leaving us, that's really I think the litmus test to determine. You can make the best margins, you can grow the fastest, but if your clients all leave you, what are you going to have at the end of the day is nothing. So I think you can put a list of all these different things which are important, but retention and attrition in my mind are sometimes even more important than margin. I hope nobody on none of my CEO or CEOs on this call, but margin and top line growth. So
Yeah, good stuff. And I think it's an easy one to miss, I feel like, at times. Matthew, what's on your top 3, 4, 5 metrics you think about?
I think it changes as you grow, right? Because it starts with bank account balance when you're like under 10 people as a business owner. I have to agree with Kane. Like employee retention would be number 2 for us. The number one reason why clients leave us is if an employee leaves because we have more small person teams. As you've grown, like gross margin has gotten increasingly important. So we track that at the leadership level, but then at the team level, that turns into utilization. At the individual level, they can see billable hour targets, stuff like that. So gross margin's kind of North Star right now from a service line perspective.
Great. And Christine, what does that look like from your perspective?
I'm gonna expand on what Kane was talking about. I think the retention with the staff, but what's important is that the staff need to trust you, right? I would always tell my staff, work yourself out of a job and trust me that you won't, because now when you have offshore and you have AI and technology coming into place, there's just this fear and panic that like resonates with people. And if you lose those people, you're not going to upskill them. You're not providing the advisory services. So that's one. The other one too, that I think is really important is conveying the value to your clients, right? I don't think that us as accountants do a good job at conveying value of what we do so easily behind the scenes. And so therefore it doesn't really always dictate the pricing that we're coming at with the client. So over communicating that value and being kind of front facing with those clients, I think is huge for those.
Great. I have a final question in from the audience. It's a big one though, so we'll see how quickly we can land some of it though. But I guess we'll start with Matthew here. Somebody was asking both, as they're building out their CAS team, what are some, I'll kind of take it. He said best places, he or she said best places to start looking, or I would say maybe channels that have been working, whether that's universities, job fairs, LinkedIn, I don't know, maybe it's all the above because it's so hard.
Yeah.
And they said, the extent you can, some things you look for to specifically identify a good fit for what CAS requires. So I know these are big questions, but I'm trying to get they're
No,
here
like
live. So
we definitely have a big takeaway here that we found. Ironically, and since we're running a CAS department, because we focus on small, this is going to be different for me, probably, and Kane and Christine, because we do smaller stuff. So for us, since we have multiple clients, so somebody could have between 5 and say 20 clients, like the actual experience, professional service experiences of dealing with multiple clients at a time is almost like that person beats out somebody coming from a corporate accounting group every single time because they've had a single client forever. So that has been like one of the secrets to our screening is getting to the person that's been in a consultative role. They've been in audit practice. They've been in a tax practice. They deal with clients. They've been in a professional services role. And then we can coach some of the accounting at the earliest levels around that. So that's been number one, ironically, over accounting skills.
great. Kane, how do you think about this?
So I agree with Matthew said, but I'm going to add something a little bit different. So we're trying to build awareness within the universities across the country as a profession to build awareness of the value and how sexy CAS can become. And I think that my daughter's a senior in college, so she's gone through it, and we are now doing interns that we take in from colleges. But it's not just tax and audit; it's now CAS and building that awareness. So today, yes, I don't think we're seen as a profession. A lot of folks coming in because they've never heard of us and they don't know what it is. But I think the future is because there is such a demand and the market is getting tight for my daughter. A lot of her friends had a hard time finding jobs. And being a CAS entry level employee, you can learn so much technology, consulting, all these great things and accounting that comes with that. So we're hoping in the next 5 years, we can get a lot of that talent from the universities, but as of today, it's a lot from industry and just reaching out through LinkedIn and through who you know and building that awareness. So that I think that's what we have today. But I'm hoping we can also feed in, as you see that public accounting firms are bringing in 50, 100 tax entry level folks or assurance. We want to get to a point that we could do the same thing on the CAS side, which we're not doing today.
Yeah, great. Well, I really appreciate everybody's time. If they want to reach out, connect with you, what's the best place for our audience to connect with you? Christine, we'll have you start. What's the best way for our community to connect with you, reach out, say thank you, or learn more about what you're up to?
Yep. So, and Deneen, I know mentioned it 'cause she's my business partner. Infinite-ties.com is our CAS community. And then you can reach me at And I can put it in the chat, ctriantos@infinite-advisors.com. Happy to answer any questions and help anybody.
Fantastic. Matthew, how about you?
I'm the tech CPA on all the socials. So on LinkedIn and if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I apologize already, or any of the socials, because I do the social media shorts for our company. So you'll see all my silliness and ridiculousness if you if you connect with me. So that's just fair warning. The tech CPA, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, whatever the heck you want. So
Awesome. And Kane, how about you?
I think I'm the only Kane Polakoff in the world. So if you look up Kane Polakoff on LinkedIn, you'll probably find me. Luckily, I'm the only one, I think. So if you find anybody else, please let me know because I'm curious.
All right, what a challenge for the community to find the other Kane Polakoff. But I appreciate everybody being on today. Really appreciate the time. Per usual, let's get into top takeaways. Go ahead and type into the Q&A, top takeaways. This is the final takeaway before we take something called a break. So we did back-to-back panels. Crazy, I know. We're about to do a 15-minute break so you can get your waters, your coffees, your lunches, whatever time of day it may be for you. Type into the Q&A. Let me know. Let the community know. Let the panelists know your top takeaway. Again, why do I ask this? Because I want it to be locked in. You just invested 45 minutes of your time on a valuable Tuesday. What's the one thing you want to capture and remember from this panel? Type it in. And of course, it has the added benefit because as we go through these, as I read them, somebody else may be illuminated by your words. And what a gift you can give to everybody else attending. It may unlock a novel way of thinking about a challenge they've been struggling with. It might spawn a new idea for something they can implement in their team or their practice. So top takeaways, we'll finish strong before we go into our first break before opening up the next panel, which I believe is pricing and packaging, which everybody always asks about pricing. So I think it should be a lot of fun. But go ahead and type in your top takeaways. Let's go ahead and take a look at. Oh, we got different departments within CAS. So yeah, I think that speaks to Kane's industry specialties. I like how he talked about both the verticals, but then the horizontal teams that worked across those. I thought that was fantastic. Value your employees. Employee retention is important along with client retention. I thought that was a great call out. We've done so many interviews on KPIs and metrics and everything else. I don't know if we've really talked about employee retention. And in CAS, where you're growing quickly and you're adding so many team members, it's such an important metric to keep an eye on. Christina said, personalized rule of thumbs. Yes. Matthew had his rule of thumbs. Matthew, I don't know if you have your little book of rules, rule of thumbs, or something like that. I imagine this kind of like a little book you hand
I'm
out
just
to
full of them. I'm just full of them.
You're just full of them.
I'm full of something. So
And then she said KPIs to serve the entity's mission space. Using your pipeline to think about through future hires. Yeah, we didn't get to double click on that one, maybe enough, but I thought Kane's point about you know, you like trying to get pipeline, trying to hire ahead, not after the fact, and trying to balancing that out. I thought was important. Learning new tech every month. The clients you serve are important consideration how you structure the team. And then last but not least, I like the idea of defining characteristics for potential candidates to look for during interviews. Fantastic, great set of takeaways. Kane, Matthew, Christine, thank you for coming on, community. I encourage you to go check out the resources, open up chat. They're dropping in links there. Of course, we're going to follow up with all the links here. And again, thank you all for jumping on the panel. Before we go to break, we have commercials. Oh, I know. Look, by the way, I'm raising these young kids, and every time we go to grandma's house, right? We go to grandma's house and they turn on the TV. They watch like Disney Junior or whatever. And they're like, "What are these things?" And I'm like, "They're commercials," right? Because we're so used to like Netflix and Hulu and whatever. I remember the first time just having to like explain to them commercials. It kind of like blew their mind. And I'm like, and I instantly felt old because I'm like, back in my day, we always watched commercials, right? So, anyways,
can I do this one? Can I do this one for you? I use my podcast voice for it. Ready?
Yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
Download your free resource, Launching Client Advisory Service. Check out this link at Jetpack Workflow to download your free resource today.
There you
Matthew, if you're ever looking to take a quick break from Acuity, Come over to Jetpack. We're gonna bring you onto the media team.
There you go.
Bring you onto the media team. I'm going to drop the link into there. I didn't know that was going to happen, so that was pretty cool. We got a professional reading for that. So everything we talk about today is free. So we had the 32 templates earlier. We have our CAS guide here. We have other things coming in the future. All right.